Welcome to today's book review. The book we'll be reviewing today tackles an extremely timely topic.
It's definitely provocative.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've been feeling like the ground is sort of shaking under our ideas of truth and expertise, this book review is really going to explain why the topic is the post-truth condition. But we're looking way beyond just, fake news. Our mission is to really analyze this startling argument that knowledge itself has become a power game.
It's a fantastic place to start. The source material is really clear that post-truth is not a world where facts are just gone.
Okay?
It's a world where the rules of the truth game itself, like what counts as good evidence, who gets to be an authority, all of that is up for grabs.
Right? And the source has this great slang for it. It calls it going meta.
Exactly. Going meta, you're not just trying to win the game by playing by the rules.
You're trying to change the rules.
You're trying to win by controlling what the rules are in the first. You're playing for what's even possible.
Which immediately makes you ask, well, who's playing? And to frame that, the sources use this idea from Vilfredo Pareto. It draws on Machiavelli's old idea about elites.
The lions and the foxes.
Yes, the lions and the foxes.
And crucially, the source calls both of them post-truth merchants.
So it's not a good guys versus bad guys situation.
Not at all. They both use strategies that put their goals, their power ahead of just objective facts.
Okay, so let's break that down. The lions, who are they?
The lions are the elites defending the status quo. They are, looking backward.
The establishment.
The establishment. The source calls their orientation inductive, which means they treat the past institutions, tradition, scientific consensus as the only reliable guide for the future. And their goal is just stability. Keep the rules as they are.
Right? And when they talk, it often comes across as this righteous indignation.
Like they're morally offended that anyone would question the established order.
Precisely. And then you have of the foxes, the challengers.
They are the complete opposite. They have a counter-inductive view.
Meaning,
they look at the status quo and just see corruption, something holding back a better future. The fox is always, and I mean always, playing for the flick to
change the rules entirely.
Yes. It's like the difference between a big old corporation and a disruptive startup.
The startup doesn't play the corporation's game.
No. It tries to make that game irrelevant, and its best weapon is to expose the lion's hypocrisy to show that the big institutions don't even follow their own rules.
So history, in this view, isn't some grand march of progress.
No, it's just this endless cycle. The lions are in charge, and the foxes flip the board, and on and on.
That's the framework we'll be using. Okay, so if we take that lens, that lions versus foxes idea, and look at modern politics and science,
wow,
it clicks into place, doesn't it?
The whole anti-expert thing becomes so much clearer.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about the whole fake news dynamic.
Right from the last decade or so.
You had the traditional, lion-like media, the New York Times, CNN.
And they were being aggressively challenged by figures like Donald Trump.
And social media just poured gasoline on that fire. Suddenly, Breitbart is streaming right next to the mainstream news.
And that pluralization of sources, it has a huge effect on you, the audience. You're hit with these totally conflicting stories.
So you either have to work to figure it out yourself,
or you just drift toward what you already believe your revealed preferences.
And the outcome, the source says, is that people are rendered more confident to decide matters of truth for themselves.
It kind of levels the playing field.
Which led to that endless TUD for that game we all saw.
Oh yeah, CNN fact-checks something.
And then Fox News attacks the fact-check itself as being biased.
And suddenly the whole news cycle is just them accusing each other, not actually reporting anything.
Which brings us to the Fox's main attack on the lions, this idea of expertise as rent-seeking.
That's a bit of jargon. Let's break it down. Rent-seeking just means expertise is a system that makes you pay with credentials, with time, with deference before you can get access to knowledge that's already out there.
So the expert is just a middleman.
An unnecessary middleman. A toll booth on the highway of knowledge. Basically, they restrict access to keep their own power.
And that ties into this huge paradox in modern democracy.
Right? It's the core of it. We educate more people than ever before, but at the same time, we invest all this authority, this normative weight, into the expert class.
So we discourage people from actually using their own judgment.
Exactly. You end up with what the source calls a culture of intellectual difference.
It calls it soft authoritarianism.
It does. And it sounds like a contradiction. I know. How can education lead to authoritarianism?
Yeah, that seems backwards.
But the paradox is this. Instead of teaching you how to know, the system ends up teaching you the limits of what you can know. It teaches you who you must listen to on big topics.
Climate, medicine, economics.
Right? So it actually restricts your ability to be a self-legislating person in the content sense.
I see. So the goal of the Fox, whether it's Brexit or intelligent design, is to break that deference.
Yes, to inspire an ethic of intelligent risk-taking.
They want people to make decisions and be willing to take personal responsibility for them, no matter what happens.
Precisely, they argue. The world is too complex for one-size-fits-all truth from the lions. We have to accept that knowledge is messy and partial and just take the risk of deciding for ourselves.
That idea of risk-taking, it really gets us to the philosophical core of all this. Because when philosophers talk about truth, they often call it an essentially contested concept.
They do. It's not just that they disagree on what's true, they disagree on what it even means for something to be true.
And this is where that philosopher Hans Winder and his idea of ALS-AB comes in.
As if right.
As if it's become sort of the guiding light for the post-truth mindset.
Fahinder's fictionalism is so central here. He argues that our best tools for dealing with the world are often useful fictions, not hard facts.
So how does he break that down?
He makes this distinction between fictions and hypothesis. A hypothesis is what you get from, say, an analytic philosopher. You know your model might be wrong, but you use it to try and get closer to reality.
You know you're not in a false world, but you're testing an idea.
Exactly. But a fiction is much more radical. With a fiction, you just proceed as if something were true, even if you have no idea. For Weihinger, the true world is kind of irrelevant. You just presume a useful falsehood and you argue from there because it helps you act or organize.
And that's why the post-truth argument is so harsh against people demanding we just return to the facts.
Right? The source actually calls that position veritism, fake philosophy.
And veritism is the idea that truth and evidence have to be the ultimate constraints on any real inquiry.
Post-truthers just see that as a way to prop up the status quo. By demanding everyone stick to the facts, you're really just telling them to outsource their own judgment to the experts who get to define those facts.
So a definition of truth that requires you to give up your own judgment becomes
Profoundly useless. It's an intellectual cop-out.
when you zoom out. The real fight here is over what the source calls modal power,
Control over what's possible.
an ancient struggle. I mean, the source brings up Plato,
Plato, the ultimate lion. He was terrified of the sophists.
the original post-truth merchants they were.
They sold rhetoric skills. And Plato's fear was that they would destroy what he called the delicate sense of virtual necessity that holds society together.
They could convince an audience that what's true today could be false tomorrow.
Yes, by blurring that line, they made people forget the real risks involved in radical change. And that's the heart of the power game. If you control what counts as truth, you control what people believe is even possible.
It's so clear how that applies to politics. But the source also turns this lens on academia itself.
Oh, absolutely. The argument is that academia is full of these disciplinary boundaries that act like intellectual monopolies.
Baited communities.
Exactly. And they are super susceptible to that rent-seeking we talked about. They protect the field more than they discover new knowledge.
And Pareto's 80-20 rule comes back here.
It does. The source notes that the huge majority of academic papers are never cited and never even read. It's just noise that hides what it calls undiscovered public knowledge.
And that knowledge is kept hidden through gatekeeping.
Systems like peer review are described very provocatively as a protective protection racket.
Wow, a protection racket.
Yeah, it creates the sense of entitlement. The discipline validates the knowledge, And in doing so, it kind of gets a collective property right over that field of study.
That is the ultimate lion move. You're just making sure everything happens within the established channels.
It is. So the only way to counter that is with what Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction. Real innovation doesn't just ask for permission to enter the gated community. It blows a new gate in the wall and builds a new neighborhood, forcing everyone else to adapt or just become irrelevant.
So if the academic disciplines are the lions, where does that creative destruction come from?
Often from the outside, from what the source calls the military-industrial will to knowledge, or MIWK.
Okay, what is that?
It's research that is just ruthlessly goal-oriented. It doesn't care about what department you're in or what your credentials are. It just cares about results.
Like the big private foundations, Rockefeller, Carnegie.
They were the pioneers. They funded basic research not for its own sake, but to extend human potential. Whether that was molecular biology or, the much more controversial field of eugenics, it was science with a mission.
And the ultimate embodiment of this is Fritz Haber,
The consummate post-truth scientist, a Nobel Prize winner.
right? His work shows his contradictions so perfectly.
On the one hand, his Haber-Bosch process for synthesizing ammonia, it creates artificial fertilizers that feed billions of people.
He literally found a way to create bread from air.
And on the other hand, he developed the chemical weapons that killed millions in World War I. His work gave humanity this massive, almost instantaneous control over both making and taking life.
So if you just measure by sheer impact, by utility, he's one of the most important figures of the 20th century.
He is. He shows that in this power game, efficacy, the power to make things happen, can outweigh all the traditional moral or ethical rules. The work functioned. That was what mattered.
Okay, so from diagnosing the present, the sources then shift into what they call the ultimate playground for the post-truth, imagination.
The future, forecasting, and risk.
Because if you want to control what's possible, you have to control how people think about the future.
And this way of thinking goes back to Baron Helmuth von Moltke and his doctrine of permanent emergency.
That sounds pretty stressful.
It's intense. Moltke's whole idea was that peacetime is just the time you spend getting ready for the next war.
So it's about aggressive preparation, not just avoiding bad things.
Yes, and that inspired modern strategies like precipitatory governance.
Which is planning as if the worst-case scenario is definitely going to happen.
Exactly. The logic is that the plans themselves create value, even if the doomsday you're planning for never arrives.
And the best example of this is the internet.
The perfect example. It was a Cold War project, a distributed network built just in case a nuclear attack took out the centralized phone system.
They planned as if the unthinkable would happen.
And it never did. But we still have the internet. As the source says, we win even, and especially if doomsday never happens.
This all leads to the proactionary principle.
Which is a really radical risk-seeking philosophy.
It prioritizes doing good over just avoiding harm.
It is the ultimate Fox way of thinking, and the logic is kind of brutal.
How so?
It says that a spectacular outright failure can actually teach the survivors more than just cautiously muddling through forever. You learn more from a collapse.
And this whole journey ends with something the source calls Pret science.
Protestant science. Basically science customization. Okay, it's the final stage of this whole anti-expert movement. The idea is the public keeps funding science, but they are not bound to the scientists' own interpretation of their findings.
But the burden of interpretation shifts to us.
Completely. You, the citizen, become a science customer, not just a passive consumer.
You get to pick and mix what you accept.
Yes, and it's justified by that same ethic of risk-taking. If you ignore the expert advice to evacuate your town before an earthquake and you're fine, you made the right call for you. If you're not, you took the risk. You are fully responsible.
Wow, that is a massive shift of authority. We've really covered how this post-truth condition turns knowledge into this constant battle over the rules, right?
Pitting the lions who defend the institutions against the foxes who demand the right to judge for themselves.
And this idea of pro-science, it really feels like the next big step in secularization.
It is. It's stripping that authority away from the big state-approved institutions like the old royal societies, and it's putting the burden of interpretation right onto you.
The history of knowledge really shows that when you move toward democracy, you get more tension between different ideas of truth, and the rise of something like pro-science suggests that trend is just going to accelerate.
It does.
It compels you, the listener, to make a decision. Are you going to just consume the rules that the experts hand down, or are you going to actively participate in deciding what's possible? To put it in the source's terms, it's a choice to be free or be programmed.